All right. Well, welcome to the live stream, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. Sorry for the technical difficulties off the top. Looks like we have issues when we reboot, I think, is part of the problem. It doesn't pick up the Vocaster, which is what I use for my microphone right away. But it sounds like we're good now, no pun intended. Thanks for being here. You're able to hear the you're able to hear the music off the top as we went in, but not necessarily the microphone. I'm gonna have to look into that. But for now, what I'd like to look into is the topic at hand. This is something we do monthly. We do a live stream every single Wednesday. That's the goal. But once per month, we're going to do what I call a Lyceum, and it's not a new thing. For those of you that are familiar with it, a Lyceum is kind of like it's I would say a combination between a lecture and a conversation. And that's kind of the way I wanted to kind of get into this. Is I was inspired by Henry David Thoreau's documentary that Ken Burns put together, along with, of all people, Don Henley, which I did not expect Don Henley of the Eagles to be such a supporter of the Thoreau's Walden Initiative and so on and so forth, their society, but here we are. And it piqued my curiosity because it was how Thoreau spread his word. And it was one way that he could do that without really leaving, going too far afield, or essentially kind of like what we're doing here, a live stream. He could do it go to one location and kind of go to a few of them and have these conversations and these discussions around a specific topic or an area of concern. And that's what I wanted to do with these. So while my other live streams, they aren't as conversational, this one I invite you to share your insights and your thoughts as we go through it. It's a nice gateway to our Time Crafting Trust community, which we have these roundtable discussions that can be workshop oriented at times, but often discussions. We have social gatherings, and we build a community around there. And I want to build a community outside of that, more intimate Time Crafting Trust community, and this is a good way for me to do that. Now, again, we do these every Wednesday in terms of live streams, but the Lyceums happen once per month. And while we try to keep them at the same cadence, the second Wednesday of the month, let's say, this is actually when we're doing this, seasons can change things up. We're heading into the summer season here in North America, and as a result, there may be some changes as to when we do the Lyceum. So I'm not going to say necessarily when in a month we're going to do it. If you're on the list, which you can get in the description, you will get notification as to when the next Lyceum is, and you should get it in advance of when the next Lyceum is, as well as the resources in advance, which we do have here in the description. And Sarah, who is here monitoring the chat right now, she also has access to the link that you can use to download the resource. It's just a helpful PDF to kind of go along with the theme of today's conversation to help you out. I want you to walk away with a tangible takeaway, and that's what these Lyceums are all about. So this time around, we are going to talk about how we really need to stop treating time like a currency and start treating it like a relationship. We often hear the term time management, or I've got to manage my time, and the idea that time and money are somewhat the same. In fact, there's that famous aphorism, "Time is money," which you've probably heard before. If you've heard that aphorism before, just let me know. It's not an uncommon one, and it was, of course, Benjamin Franklin who had said this in 1748. Right, an essay called "Advice to a Young Tradesman," and I think it's important to note that often these aphorisms or these phrases, and they don't tell the whole story. By the way, that hasn't really changed. If you ever read a headline in a newspaper or a blog post or a news story, they're meant to grab your attention. They're meant to be quick snippets. They're meant to be buzzworthy, hence the old website BuzzFeed that we used to say. I think they're BuzzFeedy kind of headlines. But they don't tell the whole story. So the complete line from this essay is, remember that time is money. He that can earn 10 shillings a day by his labor and goes abroad or sits idle 1/2 of that day, though he spends but 6 pence during his diversion, ought not to account that 6 pence only. He has really spent, or rather thrown away, 5 shillings besides. So I think what's revealing here, and really what's missing from the shorthand, is that Benjamin Franklin was giving advice specifically to tradesmen about accounting. It was really more occupational guidance and not a life philosophy. And when those things get altered and twisted even, that's when we run into problems. And so while I admire the connection that can happen to get people to look at time a bit differently, if we treat time like a currency, we are missing part of that point. We're getting it wrong, I think, in a lot of ways. This aphorism was never meant to govern how we relate to children, creativity, health, thinking. Really, it was just it was just really there to help a merchant calculate wages that were lost. So the thing that this shorthand strips out is that it also doesn't look at Franklin's caveats across the board beyond this essay. It just becomes like this universal law, right? Franklin, I mean, I've been to the Benjamin Franklin Museum in Washington, D.C. My son and I took a trip there to out east a number of years ago. And we went to both the Franklin Museum and the Franklin Institute. And the museum was fascinating. If you're ever in the Washington, D.C. area, it's not a very large museum, but it is a very, just a lot of the stuff in there is very, very cool. The thing is, once an aphorism kind of becomes a law, and what I mean by law is not like a legal thing, but like somewhat like, we hear the laws of man or the laws of power, Robert Greene's stuff. Once it becomes that way, or people decide that that's what it means, everything kind of gets measured by it. And that's the thing. If you treat time and money, they're both numerical, right? So it's just looking at it from that vantage point. And I think that's misplaced. This is where relationships can kind of fall apart, because everything gets measured by this efficiency of dollars to seconds, to minutes, to hours. When you rest, and even in the essay itself, you could misconstrue that, if you take a break, you're losing money, and so therefore don't take a break, right? So rest becomes kind of a waste. All of the space that we have, not just within time, but within our lives, it ends up falling by the wayside, right? It ends up, anything that doesn't give you any return, it just becomes suspect. So I think another thing to consider as we talk about this, and this is probably not lost on anyone who's watching this, is that you can't get time back. You can't earn time back. You can earn money. Like, it's a resource you can earn back, but time, that you can't. You can make more money. You cannot make more time. I remember having someone said this someone said this, I think yesterday. I was talking to someone, and they said, I just need more time in the day. Like, I have all these things I want to do. I just need more time in the day. I need to make more time. And I was on a call with another person who also does this time management stuff. And we're both like, should we say it? Because, that's not an issue of more time. It's an issue of prioritization, right? So the most important kind of point, time is money, that it tries to drive home, there's a breaking point. That metaphor breaks. But we've built like entire productivity cultures around it. It's useful in a ledger, which we're going to get to a ledger here in a minute, but we've just moved that ledger into places that it was never designed to go to. So let's get into kind of some of the deeper parts of our conversation today. So remember last month, if you watched last month's session, and if you're watching the replay, I'll put a link to it up in the top here, so that you can check out last month's. We talked about friction, the friction problem, like where it hides, how to start seeing it. We're going to go a layer deeper with this conversation, right? Because, this is the thing that lies underneath the friction. I would love to hear your comments. Sarah's there monitoring the chat, like I said. So if you've got some things to say, we can highlight it and put it up on the screen here. Because again, this is not meant to be a pure one-sided lecture. It's meant to be a conversation. So I'd love to hear from you along the way. So if you've been treating time like something to spend, save, or optimize, then I would say that you've been in a transaction with your own life. Time isn't money, as I pointed out, it never was. So as we circle back to this idea of friction, it's not the real problem, it's just a symptom. This is the deeper issue, is how we think about time. That's the deeper issue. And I am big on making sure that we understand that when we're thinking in a transactional way, we end up missing out on the joys, the emotional components. I would say you could go with zest. You could go with these moments of pure life that you miss out on. I was watching, and this was not part of what I was necessarily going to talk about, but it's fitting. The Netflix released a new documentary as of yesterday, so the day before we were recording this, on Martin Short, so a movie by Lawrence Kasdan, who's a friend of Martin Short's and has been for 40 years, I guess. Now, I have a particular affinity to Martin Short for multiple reasons. I mean, if you've been following my work or know me, you know that I'm big into comedy. I did perform improv and sketch comedy, and had a sketch comedy troupe that performed, internationally. We performed in Washington, D.C. at a comedy festival. We performed in San Francisco. We've performed in major cities in Canada as well. And so I've always had a love for comedy, just like I've had a love for writing. Performing and writing have always been things that I've just loved to do. And I'm leaning into the more and more, especially with here on YouTube, to kind of, when I say perform, it's just to put myself out there a bit more. I've created essentially my own stage, and YouTube gives you the opportunity to do it, which I think is fantastic. But why Martin Short? Well, Martin Short's from my hometown. Martin Short grew up in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. So did I. I was born there, raised there for part of my life, and we moved in and around the Hamilton area. But I was just actually back there last month, and went to a restaurant there that I used to go to when I was in high school, because even though I didn't live in Hamilton when I went to high school, I certainly I lived in an area that we had to go to Hamilton because it was the closest place where our Catholic high school was. And that high school has moved. I actually was the last graduating class, I think, from the high school. It was set at McMaster University's campus. That's where it was. But that's neither here nor there. Back to the Martin Short piece is so he grew up in Hamilton, went to, lived, I know where he lived. And when you watch this documentary, you can see the way he's lived his life, even with loss, because he lost his brother when he was 12, he lost his mom when he was 18, and lost his dad when he was 20. And recently he lost his wife to cancer about, I think, almost 20 years ago. maybe a little bit more recent than that. And then he recently lost his daughter. And yet yesterday, during the promotional part of this documentary, he shared his thoughts around loss. And during the documentary, one of the quotes that really stood out to me was from Tom Hanks. And you see these moments in the documentary of just sheer, utter joy and love. Family. You get to see Hollywood types, quote, acting like normal people. And Tom Hanks was along with his wife Rita were there as well. And during the documentary, Tom Hanks said this near the tail end of the documentary. And he said, "Marty operates at the speed of joy." And I thought that was rather fascinating, because I don't think, if you are treating time as this thing to spend, save, or optimize, if you are so driven or focused or devoting your attention to this, by the way, hi Nia, hi Dan, hi John. I know some folks are here live as well. I want to acknowledge them. If you're doing that, then there's an exchange happening, but it's very transactional. There is no blend there, for lack of a better term. There is no, it's very quantitative. It leans quantitative. And I think that when you start to think about time as something relational rather than transactional, and again, I'm not trained in any of this. I mean, I've just through observation and spending a lot of time learning on my own, reading old texts, new texts, research. My daughter and I have had fascinating conversations around this, and she's getting her degree in psychology. I think it can help you with things that have happened in the past, things that are happening right now, and things that you'd like to see happen in the future. Not through this saving, spending, optimizing, all of that, leveraging tools. It's more about, okay, how am I going to relate to this? And again, Martin Short's, like, some of the stuff he says, not only during the documentary, but in that interview, is an example of that. I want to point out what John's saying here, and of course, it's coming up as a text box in black. So we're going to change that to a text box in white. And there we go. John says, I find the challenge to be finding a way to interrupt patterns that hijack my attention. So this involves fostering a relationship with parts of me that take over. So I love this metaphor. Well, thanks, John. The thing is, I also think, and you bring up a really interesting point, that if we try to manage time, then we're trying to manage time and attention and tasks. Like, so we get managing is very much it's very, I mean, there's a difference between being a manager and a leader, right? I mean, a manager is a role, right? Leader is also a role, but leadership is something you can apply to being a manager. And I can tell you from experience that when I was working at Costco all those years ago, and I decided to, I wanted to be promoted. And I would have been 21, 22. And I remember working, our supervisor and I had all the experience in the world. I had worked in, this was for the food court, so I had a lot of experience. And I was upset that I didn't get the job. Somebody older than me did. That didn't necessarily have my experience, but they were more experienced in life. And I remember the person that was in charge of the whole food court area across Canada. So they had come into the warehouse we were at, and we had a conversation because I was upset. And I said, what do I need to do? And he said, you have all the, quote, hard skills that we're looking for, but you need to work on your, quote, soft skills. And I know that we don't really say soft skills and hard skills as much anymore, but I could manage, but I couldn't be a leader. And I think that the more things that you have to manage, leadership can take a hit, especially if you're younger. Like, especially because I think what can happen is when you're younger and you're thrust into these positions is that you don't have the wisdom to set better boundaries, to say no to things, to take a step back, to pause. I think that's one of the interesting things about being young is that, I've got to get this done today. I've got to do this now. Why doesn't this just work? I should, let's make this happen. Why? I've got to fix this. And, there's certain things that will never be, quote, fixed. They just need to be, quote, maintained. And even then, often they just need to be dealt with or handled rather than maintained. Again, the words matter, I think. And so what I'm trying to say here is that when you're managing time and attention, you're already dedicating part of your efforts, your focus, your concentration, all of that attention, no less, to managing something that cannot be managed, which is time. Time moves on whether we want it to or not. Time will be here long after we are around, and that's been here before us. For those of us that are going through daylight savings time changes in Canada, we're having that. Looks like another province in Canada is going to also follow suit and get rid of the time change. Whether they're doing the right time change or not is, again, neither here nor there, but that just goes to show that time is, in some methods, at least within time, it's a man-made construct, right? And so if we're trying to manage time and attention, I encourage you to just stop trying to manage time and instead focus on managing your attention, because attention lives within time. So if anything, you're going a layer deeper, right? If you're going a layer deeper, then your relationship with time will improve because you're getting to the, quote, heart of the matter. So again, I really want to encourage you to look at this not as again, that idea of time is money. I can't think of a better metaphor offhand that would, when I say better, like that is better than that one. I'm not saying, and again, I'm not saying that's a good metaphor. Let me be clear. I can't think of one to replace it. And that just, I don't think I ever could, at least fully, because number one, it's nuanced. Number two, there's an arrogance in even saying that time is the same as anything else. So to say, well, time is also this, it's saying the same thing, about nature, right? It maybe in some instances, and again, not a scientist, climate and weather, right? People are like, oh, well, climate and weather are the same thing. They're not. But I can see where, because they're so closely related, where people can get that confused, right? Again, and even terms like global warming, where like, no, see, there's no problem. Look how hot it is here, versus how, I don't understand what the problem is. Words can not only crystallize and clarify, but they can also confuse and conflate, right? So I think when you're looking at operating through this mindset of time is money, it does naturally create this transactional attitude. So just don't manage time. Manage the things that live within it. So I'm proposing that we should do this relational shift. And it's interesting because as I look at this slide that I'm sharing with you right now, not what's this worth, but what does this need to grow? If you do decide, or if you're thinking about time in a currency sort of way, wouldn't be that what you would want anyway? Not what's this worth right now, but what does this need to grow to increase in value? So it would be worth more, I would argue, when you think about it this way. It doesn't say, what does this need to sustain? What does this need to maintain? What does this need to contract? It says, what does this need to grow? So the alternative isn't the alternative to managing time is crafting it, not spending it, inhabiting it, like living in it, which we do anyway. Just saying, okay, this is what we do. So if you make this shift from transactional, right, which is spending and optimizing, to relational, which is presence and growth, it goes, the questions you ask yourself go from, am I being efficient, to am I being intentional? Which, if you ask that latter question, I think that leads to being more efficacious, having more efficacy. Because if you're focusing on, am I being efficient, what if you're being efficient at the wrong thing? And people will say, well, that's not efficiency then. You're not being efficient. But there are so many people that just focus on efficiency rather than, is this the right thing? So they're not asking that initial question, what's my intention? All of a sudden they're like, well, why was I even focusing on this thing? I could go for longer on the idea of efficiency and where that's a problem. Maybe I'll do that. I think I should do that as a future Lyceum. If you'd like me to talk about efficiency as a future Lyceum, not efficacy, which is one of the principles of productiveness, and not effectiveness either, although they would come up in a conversation or a Lyceum like that. But if you want me to dive into efficiency and where we get, no matter how much we say, well, this is what efficiency is, and we get that confused, just let me know in the comments or just chime in, because I think that that's an area that we've messed up as well. So we also go from measuring return to creating conditions, which again, I would argue happens a lot in a financial sense anyway. Conditions get created, which then can then affect the return that you get as a result of those conditions. So now I'll get a little political, maybe. Would it be safe to say that the conditions that are being created right now in the conflict in the Middle East, have they affected the return that on the, let's say, the oil market? I would argue, yes, they've created conditions that have affected the return. So they do, I mean, that, and again, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of what the conflict is and isn't. That's not the point of this. But what I'm saying is that those conditions are definitely affecting the return. So we do this anyway, but probably not in other areas of our lives. It's just being being intentional about it. And these are things that with things that we have some sense of command over. John, I'm going to post your thing here. This shift also seems to relate to how time is in play with habits and to the extreme of habits that end in addiction. Another movie that I watched recently for a second time, and I almost wanted to watch it again this week, was The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, which is based on a 1939, I think. It was in the 30s, James Thurber story. And I'm not talking about the Danny Kaye version. I'm talking about the Ben Stiller version of the movie. And phenomenal film, highly, I think I heard someone describe it as a independent a big budget film, a movie that had a budget for a big film but is a small movie, I think is the way it was described. Beautifully shot. Ben Stiller did an amazing film. There's this episode of this podcast called Unspooled that I listened to, and they really dove deep into it, which is what led me to watch it again. And why I bring that up is this character, Walter Mitty, not just in this movie, but also, you know, in the original story, spent a lot of time daydreaming. And in the film, I mean, they obviously bring a lot of this to life. Same thing in the story and also in the original Danny Kaye film. But it's almost this individual had such a routinized life that the routines became a rut. And you can get addicted to the rut. You can get addicted to the routine. You can get addicted to, and it's not, I don't think it doesn't get portrayed in the same way as like an addiction to a vice, right? But I think there are things that are addictive. Again, when we create new pathways, new neural pathways to something, we get addicted to that. I mean, people, I would argue that somebody who decides that they're going to go work out every day at the same time eventually builds that routine to the point where it feels weird when they don't go. The distance between addictive and consistency, I think, can be very, it can be, I wouldn't say blurred, but I think that they are right next to one another. And so, but you notice if you watch this film, not so much the book, and that I think that the book is the story is very different. And the Danny Kaye version leans more into the comedic part, but the Ben Stiller film in particular, which I don't think you can stream anywhere, at least not in Canada. I had to buy it, which I'm totally fine with, because I now own it, and I love owning films that I want to watch on more than one occasion. You could see as the film progresses that he removes himself from the day-to-day rut that he's built, and he's better for it. But at the end, the payoff is it's also the thing that he did regularly that he ultimately gets the highest praise for as well. So it's not just these highs of highs that he does when he, you know, in parts of the film. It's also just the quality output of the thing that he does regularly. So it's not a this or that. And that's where transactional stuff can be a problem, because it's either this or that. I'm going to trade this for this. Like there's a bartering that's going on. Whereas with relational stuff, it's not that. You're not counting what you spend. You're noticing what you're nurturing. So you're not, again, if you really get, this is why I will always say I don't manage time, I manage my relationship with time. Because that is, and I say that only because I know time management is, again, that BuzzFeedy kind of, it's a term we all know. But I also know that if I try to say you don't manage time, you have a relationship with it, it immediately alienates so many people because they can't make that leap right away. So my job, I believe, is to kind of nurture that along the way. And I know there's people here from the Time Crafting Trust community that I hope that comes across, and I hope that's why, that's one of the reasons they're in the community, is because of that. Another quote that came from that Martin Short documentary was from his father, and maybe this is a bit of, this is what I hope. We're human, so I'm going to share it with you anyway. He was talking about his son growing up, and one of the things that Charles Short, who was his father, who worked at Stelco, which is a very famous industry company in Canada. It was a famous company in Hamilton. I don't know if Stelco exists anymore. I think they were bought out. But he said, the person that has a distinctive voice is the one that will be remembered. And I like that, because I'd like to think that some of what I share is distinctive, but also none of that is the person that shows up, puts in 10,000 hours will be remembered, or the person that makes 500 YouTube videos will be remembered. There are people out there that make one YouTube video a month that garner so many more views. Some hardly garner any, but end up getting attention in some other ways. That's not what I'm seeking here. But my point is that when we measure quantitative stuff over qualitative stuff, we lean transactional. Qualitative leans relational. And there is this balance that we're looking for. And Sarah's done a bit of research for me. So in 2024, so back to Stelco, this is just interesting. Stelco was acquired a couple of years ago for $2.5 billion. So Hamilton in Canada is basically Pittsburgh in the United States in terms of steel. There's the plant hasn't produced anything since 2011 though, but all of the coke ovens and cold rolling finishing works remain in operation. Certainly didn't look like nothing was happening there, but there was also a lot of other steel businesses that happened when I was there. So you can see it, the smokestacks in the distance. But anyway, so relationships with people, with projects, with your own thinking, they don't respond to efficiency. They respond to presence. And by the way, you may not necessarily like how they respond, but they do, right? Sometimes you'll say things that are like, what in the world? But the only way you can get there is by being present. So I want to talk about the resource that I've given you today as we get closer to wrapping up here. So I put together this one pager, which you can print off, and I've got it right here. It's called the Time Ledger. So I figured, like I said, there's that leap between managing time and managing your relationship with time. I don't expect to break a almost 300-year-old aphorism by just pointing out its flaws in a single video. And I'll talk about it elsewhere, but I will lean into some of the elements that people discuss around time. So this PDF kind of offers not just some solutions, but some real concerns, which are 6 ways that you treat time like currency. So 6 ways that this transactional attitude or mindset show up in your day, week, what have you. And then the relational shift for each one. Now, I know that there's some people inside this community here that took part in our recent workshop roundtable, where I leaned more into the mechanism that allows you to measure your productiveness, this return on intention, this productiveness ROI. The productiveness ROI can definitely help you with this idea of shifting from a transactional mindset to a relational one. So for those of you that are watching this now that have access to that, and again, if you're watching this in the future and you've found access to it, that is a tool that can definitely help you with all 6 of these ways as well. All right. So let's go through a couple of them really quickly. So I mentioned the efficiency issue. So number 2 is the efficiency override. So you've optimized the depth out of things that needed presence. Speed works for tasks, but it doesn't work for thinking, connecting, or creating. So the thing to try would be choose one thing you've been rushing through and give it a session this week with no time limit attached. Notice what changes. So an example of this could be, and this is where if you're using time theming, let's say you've got, like today is my daily theme. My daily theme for today is exploration. So let's say that I want to explore ClickUp more deeply. It's a productivity tool that we use, Sarah and I use together. Because it's a daily theme, I'm giving it a container of time, but it's such a vast, big container of time. It's 24 hours, essentially. Sure, probably closer to 16 when you factor in sleep, maybe even less, maybe 14 if you take into account breaks, et cetera, et cetera. But I would argue that at least 50% of the day, at least 33% of the day, could be dedicated to just diving into that. And because we are really bad at noticing how time passes, if we're occupied with something, it can fly by. And if we're sitting there bored, it can take forever. As Gretchen Rubin says, the days are long, but the years are short. This would be an example of, okay, I'm not going to try to do this in a 1 hour session. I'm going to take the day and spend time when exploring it. And theming gives you this possibility to do it regularly. Let's go with the ledger habit. We hear this a lot, like you should track your time, track where your time is going. And again, I don't think that that's a bad idea on its face. I think that when you do it so much, that quantified self movement that existed was really prevalent probably about 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago, maybe even, no, probably it was pre-COVID. So definitely closer to 10 years ago, where you were measuring things to the nth degree. It still exists, but mind you, but it was really, really like being pushed. And I think it may see a bit of a renaissance, like with the advent of generative AI. And I think there's the longevity documentary, but I think his name is Brian Johnson, that is trying to like track everything so that he can live longer. But really, is it really living longer if you're if you're tracking so much? To what end are you doing that? And I think that this is what number 4 talks about. You're always counting, tracking, auditing, and measuring whether you spend your time wisely. But when time is a ledger, you never fully are in the moment that you're in. So what you could do is notice when you start calculating time during an experience. And then that's the signal to put the ledger down and just be where you are. So those are 2 of the examples that you get with this time ledger, and just print it off, or maybe build because you could build like a little workbook of the different resources that you're getting from these Lyceums. Because the last one we did, the friction, I think it was the friction finder. But that's the aim here, is to just get you to think differently about things. So if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on these very particular live streams, like I said, we do a live stream every Wednesday, but if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on this specific ones where we get deeper into topics and invite you to share insights and feedbacks. And John, by the way, thank you for chiming in. Anyone else wants to chime in? There's still some time as I'm kind of doing the wrap up here. I'd love to hear your thoughts, feedback, insights, maybe something that really landed for you during our time together today. But if you go to mikevardy.com/Lyceum, it'll indicate that you're interested in live streams, and specifically these ones. And the aim is to keep doing these monthly with a resource that you can take with you and use. Make the most of it. If you don't want to use it, that's fine. It's just there to support you. And we do this kind of support, this kind of connection inside of the Time Crafting Trust community, basically every day. It's available to those that are in the community every day, whether through conversations with the 100+ members that are in the community, whether it's through direct and indirect access to me because I'm in that community daily. Whether it's and Sarah offers amazing help to our community members as well. There's courses there, all that stuff to support you in your time crafting journey. So if it's something that you're interested in, that's the next level beyond this. Sure, you could work with me one-on-one with coaching and so on and so forth. But if you want something that I think is a nice bridge between these Lyceums and also coaching one-on-one, which not only can be intense, which is totally fine, but also, it costs more. Definitely costs more than this, and definitely costs more than the membership. Then I think the membership might be a way to go. We've got a couple more comments. So John, thank you for being here. John is a member of Time Crafting Trust, by the way. So you could see even that this is something we don't do this particular Lyceum stuff inside of Time Crafting Trust. We do it, for all of you, but there are some other things that pop up. And then Dan, thanks, really appreciate it. Yeah, Dan, this is only the second one I've done, so we'll be doing them monthly. Next month, I will be doing we will be doing it a little bit earlier. So normally, like, we've been trying to do it the second week of the month. I think last month we did the second week as well. It might have been the third week because there were 5 Wednesdays in April. But typically I'm going to try to do this the second Wednesday of the month. But next month I will be away during the second Wednesday, so we're going to do it a little bit earlier. But again, if you sign up to mikevardy.com/Lyceum, that would be the way to go. And that way you get notified. And Sarah, of course, she loves our Time Crafting Trust membership and love for you to join us. And they love you, Sarah. Our members love you as well. So, and thank you, Sarah, for being here today. I really do appreciate it. So we're going to wrap things up here. Again, I encourage you to check out this time ledger to help you. And I really, my aim for this was to really have you not just think about transactional versus relational mindsets around time, but I also want you to question aphorisms when you hear them a little bit more. So when you hear something like time is money, maybe see, like, what did that mean? Go a little bit deeper. There's an example of where you can display presence over processing, right? Another one, and I'm going to butcher this, but I mean, maybe Sarah could help me out with it. There's this phrase, blood is thicker than water, which often gets applied to familial bonds. But if I remember correctly, I think after that is, but the blood of the covenant is even stronger, and I'm butchering it. But my understanding of that is that the ones that we choose, the people we choose to be around, are even stronger. Those things that we forge out of our own volition are stronger. Now, in this case, it's definitely applying to, say, faith or spirituality, but we don't hear that part very often. We hear blood is thicker than water. There we go. Thank you, Sarah. I knew she'd have it. The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb. Again, and I don't think I was too far off, Sarah, when I said, and those of you that are watching this, that that could be applied to the commitment that you make, obviously in a spiritual sense, in a religious sense in this instance, but it's when you have choice. It's when you are able to be, when you're fully sentient, like able to go, okay, I'm making this choice. I was raised Catholic. I remember confirmation. You were able to say, okay, that was the thing after baptism, right? Not to get religious here, but the point is my whole point around this is that when you hear an aphorism, time is money, blood is thicker than water, the early bird gets the worm. Yeah, but the second mouse gets the cheese. There's never a absolute. And if you read my book, The Productivity Diet, you know that there's lots of pitfalls with absolutes. I talk about it. Yes, there you go. As happy as a clam. I don't know the second half of that aphorism, Dan. At high tide. For those of you that don't know, I don't think clams are that happy at high tide. I live on the Pacific Ocean. I've never seen a happy clam when the tide is high. Maybe I'm wrong here. But again, this is a perfect example of attention, managing your attention as opposed to managing time. Like if you devote some attention, and that thinking allows you to, critical thinking requires space, requires presence. So nonetheless, thank you for being here. I look forward to seeing you on future live streams, and hopefully you'll be at the next Lyceum. Again, go to mikevardy.com/Lyceum to make sure you don't miss it. Again, enjoy the rest of your day. And until next time, remember, stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.